Guys and gals, sorry to keep you waiting a week for another video. Had kind of a hectic week here, start off to 2022. Had some sewer freeze up and compressor quit. So here's to part 3, I think, of this bagger revival. So today we're just hanging out with Jared from Adventures with Purpose. He's recovering some cars and answering questions for families. You can watch him on YouTube. I really like watching him. And we're going to start by putting the throttle body back on, air cleaner, get that sealed up, hook up our throttle cables, and put our exhaust on, get this thing ready to fire up. This air cleaner plate actually had nipples installed here for any crankcase gases to be vented out into the atmosphere. We're actually putting those back in, plugging them off, and we're going to run our crank vents into the intake as it should be. It actually makes more horsepower running your crank vents into your intake unless you put a nipple on here with a vacuum pump. Every part of an engine assembly and install is very important. Here we're going to put our 1/2-inch bolts, just get them started so that when we put our intake flange on, we can just slide it in there. When we put our flanges on, we're going to use a little bit of soapy water for these, slide these together. So the reason throttle body assembly is so important is if you develop any sort of an air leak from the throttle body to the head, you're never going to get this thing tuned properly. So you want to have a little bit of soapy water, spray that on your flange, and then put your intake seal on there. Have a little bit of soap on the face, and the reason we use soap is because soap dries up and gets sticky, whereas if you use any sort of petroleum based oil, it just stays slippery and will never seal up. On this particular bike, we're going to use a 50 mil Screaming Eagle throttle body, 06 to 07 or 05 to 07, I believe it was. We got our 4 bolts in our intake, which are just loose. We're going to put our gasket and our 3 air filter backing plate bolts into our throttle body. We're not going to use any Loctite at this time because we're just lining everything up. We'll take these off again later on and Loctite them. If we need to shim between the plate and the head, we'll do that later as well. Even these bolts we're going to leave in there loose for now. These will be the last part we tighten up. But everything is supported now, kind of where it's going to want to sit eventually. We got a ball end Allen to tighten the inner 2 bolts here. We're going to, at this point in time, we're going to tighten these up. Then we're going to go around the back side and tighten up the other 2, which are just 1/2 inch. So we've got all 4 of our intake manifold bolts tight. We're going to tighten these 3 and check our gap between the backing plate and the head. Now that we've got those 3 bolts tight, you can see here we have pretty much no gap. The rubber O-ring will take that up, and it's not going to move enough to cause a leak down here on the head. Here we've got a little bit of a bigger gap, so we've got a tiny little shim that'll take that gap up. As you can see, it goes right in there, nice and tight, and that should give us 100% seal on our intake. Now that we've got our O-rings in the back here, we're going to put some red Loctite on our bolts. Make sure our gasket's in there. Get these in there hand tight. Tighten these 3 up. We've got our 2 breather bolts in there with our shim behind the rear cylinder. Now we're going to put our idle air control motor back in with the retaining plate. Tighten up these 2 screws. Now that we've got our idle air control motor in there with the retaining plate, it's also got the plate in for our throttle cables. So we'll put our throttle cables in. The return cable is the one with the spring on it. All right, now that we got our 50 mil throttle body in there, we've got to plug in all our connectors. For that, we're going to need this kit from Zippers. It'll come with new injector connectors, and it'll come with your new throttle position sensor as well that you got to wire in so that you can run your 06 and up throttle body on your 05 and older wiring harness. Very simple kit. All right, now that we've got our new wiring harness kit installed from Zippers, put your head temperature sensor in there, get that plugged in. We're going to mount our coil back where it's supposed to be, get it plugged in, and we did our wheel alignment already, so we're going to put our top motor mount in, 3 bolts, and it's adjusted already, so we don't have nothing to do there. All your connectors you're going to want to use with dielectric grease. Dielectric grease is not a conductor. That would mess a lot of things up real quick if it was a conductor. It is just a water sealant. Keeps the water out, dirt. We're going to take these Harley Davidson spark plugs, which are brand new, and we're going to pitch them in the garbage. Champion. We're going to put some NGK DCP R7E spark plugs in. A little bit of nickel anti-seize on the threads. Get the horn wire run down there. Ground wire was missing, so we had to build a new ground wire from the horn. The engine mount here. Now we're going to go the other side, put the air filter on. We're on this old style crank breather. Always put some air filter grease in here. Why? Put your air filter over top like that. You're still going to suck a little dirt in between there and this cover. This way you know you're not sucking any dust inside. Alright guys, thanks for watching. We got the filter installed here tonight. Heard me say it before, if you're running an open filter, put a sock on it. Tomorrow we're going to reassemble our fuel tank with a new filter, and we're going to put our ThunderMax EFI module in here with our exhaust system, and God willing, maybe we'll fire it up. Thanks for watching. Please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you tomorrow.